Inside the imperial palace, the supreme king, or the emperor of the palace, arrived and asked his daughter about what was going on. The princess immediately turned around as she saw the emperor present there and told him that the dungeon they had was finally leveled up. The lady started explaining everything, and after grasping the whole story, the king told the princess that the promises they made to Lin must be kept. And all the people watching this must subscribe to the channel to get the videos the fastest. They should have the divine general have a good time right now. Additionally, the king wanted the princess to send all spoils to the military so that they could begin the training. As the scene shifts, we see that Lin was inside the dungeon, and a notification popped up telling him that the dungeon had been upgraded and was currently at hell-level difficulty. As Lin was traversing through the place, he saw a strange kind of orb floating in the air, which was the electric elemental stored. It deals 50% damage increase with a chance to gain an electric skill, and it also had the lightning gem, which grants permanent immunity to lightning attacks. Lin knew that he wanted it as he started climbing onto the rocks, and finally he got the lightning stone without much problem. But still, Lin was completely covered with red aura of the evil forces in the dungeon. But suddenly, Lin was shocked as he acquired the skill from the lightning gem, which was called the Wings of Lightning. Finally, Lin was able to fly with the power of lightning wings, but it was only for 1 minute, and then the skill had a cooldown of 10 minutes. Lin was happy knowing that even when it was only 1 minute, at least he could soar in the sky now. And as he was curious about the speed, Lin did the Spider-Man pose and opened his wings like Batman and jumped into the air with insane speeds. He came to know that the lightning wings had such speed that it was almost like teleportation, and only 1 minute was enough to travel great spaces. Next up, he knew that he needed to snag the crystal shards along with the key and the awakening artifact. So then he started flying with an immersive speed, going towards the location. But suddenly, as Lin noticed something, he turned around and saw a large rock hurling towards him. The boy was somehow able to dodge it due to the insane speeds of the lightning wings. But then, as he turned around, he saw that the rock was thrown by a monster named the Lightning Ape. It was a level 40 boss with a strength of 60,000, agility of 40,000. It had a spirit of 60,000, and its skills included lightning wings and thunderous giant arm. It reduces electric elemental damage by 50%, and physical damage was also reduced by the same, along with getting the speed boost from the lightning wings. The ape started angrily screeching and screaming while he immediately jumped onto our boy. But Lin was still not going to give up, immediately using his Sloka's technique and stopping the ape in its place. And then he used the elemental explosion attack along with the soul flame, which made the lightning ape scream in pain and agony as he was traumatized by the mental attack. Lin was sure that his warriors would bring an end to the boss's life, as he was continuously using the Slokas and the soul flame. The Sloka's chains made the ape go down onto the ground, and as soon as he reached it, waiting there were countless skeletal warriors of platinum level who started running towards the boss while using the raging strike. They were swinging their swords and axes with all their might. But still, Lin wondered about why the boss did not attack him right away and instead let him prepare to defeat him. Lin thought that maybe the lightning ape was guarding something, and as he turned around, Lin was completely right. He soared through the sky and immediately got near the treasure, which was the electric grass that can be used to awaken the god of thunder. Finally, Lin had got the artifact he had been searching for and knew that with the awakening artifact in his hand, all that was left was the key, which he had to find. After the relentless barrage of the skeleton warriors, the lightning ape was finally defeated, giving a whole lot of experience along with some lightning crystal fragments, which can be combined into a complete lightning crystal. Lin thought that it was just in time, and as the boss had been wrapped up, now he could find what he wanted. But suddenly, as Lin turned around, he saw a huge flame coming towards him, and even when he was not able to understand, the flame descended onto the ground and made Lin reactivate his skeletal armor immediately because he was not sure of the danger. Lin was nervous while he wondered about what had finally appeared, and as he opened his eyes once again after the dust and debris cleared, Lin saw that in the place of the fire there was a golden sword which was embedded in the ground due to the impact. It was radiating a red aura from all around it, and Lin wondered about what it was. Even when the boy was not sure, he decided to take out the sword. But as soon as he did so, A red aura surrounded him, and Lin started having visions of a divine being, which was none other than the god of thunder, who was also called the king of the Mana beasts, an existence that even the teachers and the powerful old men could not rival. We see a crazy shot of the thunder god slashing the beasts in one go, which even Lu Sheng had a hard time defeating. The thunder god was actually having a good time while he was defeating the beast and overpowering it. The creature was not ready to give up and kept attacking the thunder god in his thunderous form. But as soon as the beast touched him, it was electrocuted and felt a large sense of pain. Still, the Mana beast was able to sink its fangs into the chest of the thunder god, and Lin was shocked to see that the god of thunder was killed by the beast. Finally, Lin realized that even though the thunder god had defeated multiple beasts, he was slain by a powerful Mana beast and fell at the hands of the beast king itself. Lin was finally able to pull out the sword completely, deciding that if the opportunity arose in the future, he would awaken the thunder god and do whatever it took, whatever the god commanded. Finally, Lin decided to keep the sword, but it started shrinking with a red light around it. The sword settled into the palm of Lin's hand, and it was revealed that this sword belonged to the thunder god and was the key to unlocking the Thunder Palace. Lin was sure he would fulfill his promise because he always did, and then he teleported back to the Imperial Palace. Both the princess and the king were waiting for him, and Lin immediately bowed to the king, knowing he should respect the old man. But the king, on the other hand, wanted no formalities, as he had been hearing about the young divine general Lin lately, but never expected the boy to be so young. Looking at him, the king was sure that the youth of the empire was formidable. Even when Lin wanted to tell the king that he was the one who had been broken and was the main character, he decided not to say anything, and instead told the king that he was too kind. The king apologized for the earlier incident with the princess's brother, who was nothing but a royal brat. The king extended the royal family's apologies to the divine general Lin, and then called out to his daughter, telling Lin that if he had any requests, he should feel free to speak directly to the princess. The king meant literally anything within the royal family's capacity, and if so, it would be granted without fail. Lin thanked the king for such generosity and even told him that if there was anything Lin could assist with, he should not hesitate to ask. The king was happy to know that the royal family and the divine general would be friends in the future, but he decided to leave, letting the young folks have their own conversation. As soon as the king left, the princess immediately thanked Lin for what he had done. But as calm as ever, the boy told the princess there was no need to thank him, as he had already got what he needed. But he still needed to run the dungeon a few more times to level up. Lin estimated that the royal people should be able to enter the dungeon in about 3 hours and not before that. The princess just smiled and waved at Lin, knowing the boy was really looking handsome. As the scene shifted, Lin entered the dungeon again and again, defeating the same lightning ape using multiple tactics and strategies. Just like that, 3 hours passed, and Lin was back for good. He told the princess that all his work was done now. As it was really over, the princess told Lin that they should go find her grandpa, Li, so that Lin could see the classics he wanted. The princess announced to the old man that the divine general had emerged from the dungeon, and as soon as she did so, both of them were suddenly teleported into a grand library room filled with books. In a chair sat an old man, even older than the king, and the princess ran toward him, telling Lin that this was her grandpa, Grandpa Li. The princess introduced Lin to the old man, addressing him as the divine general. But the old man's memory was still sharp, as he also knew who Lin was, though he never expected the boy to be so young. Even when he heard from the princess that Lin became a divine general at level 37, it was still hard to believe how someone so young could reach such a high rank. But the old man decided not to dwell on it and started swirling his hands in the air. At first, nothing happened, but then multiple books started flying around, and Lin was handed a thick book. The old man explained that as the divine general, Lin could use the ancient texts in the library at his leisure, soaking in the wisdom from the books for as long as he wished. Now Lin had a treasure trove of knowledge and thanked the old man for his kindness. As the scene shifted, we saw that even though Lin's eyes were on the books, the princess's eyes kept glancing at the boy, and she was starting to fall for him even more. Even Grandpa noticed this and realized what was happening. But on the other hand, Lin remained the nerd he was, fascinated by the ancient tome of the Imperial Secret Wall, which contained countless secrets even the prestigious academies had never documented. The books also held tales of the righteous gods and the first pages of humanity's history. Lin wondered if he could find any information about the figure in the ancient trials. He managed to finish the books 2 hours later and was happy with the knowledge he had gained. The princess immediately asked the boy if he had found any treasure, and Lin just smiled, telling her that it wasn't bad at all, and there was definitely a wealth of information in the library he wouldn't find elsewhere. But still, Lin admitted to both the princess and the old man that he hadn't found exactly what he was looking for. The old man stepped forward and asked Lin what he wanted to know, thinking perhaps his memory could help the boy. It was then that Lin revealed he was curious about the tailies of the wasteland and information about the boss located in the central pole area of the ancient trial battlefields. As soon as the old man heard this, a strange yellow light started glowing from him, and he suddenly seemed young again, realizing that Lin was no joke. Even Lin could tell that the old man might know something important. The old man started using his psychic powers, and a book emerged from the library, one that had not been visible before. He told Lin that the information he sought was inside this book, and ordinary folks couldn't even see it. Even the princess didn't have the privilege to read it, but Lin was granted access because he already knew a thing or two about it. Lin thanked the old man and told him he would always remember his kindness. But Grandpa just smiled as Lin started reading the book with intense enthusiasm. Lin soon realized that the monster he saw in the eternal trial battlefield was actually connected to the wasteland and had faced many wild beasts before without much trouble. Finally, Lin understood that even the wild beasts could be killed. They were not invincible at all. But he still decided not to underestimate them and to make sure he had enough strength. Even though the royal treasury held many secrets hidden from the world, no news had surfaced about the person Lin wanted to know about. As he finished reading, he thanked the old man. Hearing that, the princess happily told her grandpa that she wouldn't disturb him any longer because she had to take Lin out and show him the place. The grandfather just smiled and let the girl do whatever she wanted. Their next stop was the royal vault, and with the princess as Lin's guide, he might just avoid getting lost. It was a great maze with multiple paths. As the scene shifted, we saw that Lin and the princess were still inside the teleportation circle, and Lin immediately realized something was wrong. 5 minutes later, they were still inside the teleportation circle, and even the princess started wondering what was happening. They were supposed to go to the royal vault, and it shouldn't take this long. Lin explained that with 5 minutes of teleportation, they must have already crossed the border of the Divine Empire and were going somewhere completely different. At that moment, something shiny appeared all of a sudden, and the princess somehow managed to block the light while Lin looked at it head-on, unaffected. As the light cleared, the two found themselves in a rocky terrain that was completely unfamiliar. But the princess knew this place. She told Lin that it was the realm of decay. Yet she still couldn't understand how they ended up in the realm of decay along with the one she liked. Maybe this would become the chapter where they have another date in some other world. But anyway, the realm of decay was full of corpses running toward the princess and Lin without any care in the world. As the princess screamed, Lin immediately used his skeletal fans to make multiple holes in the bodies of the zombies. He wondered how they had suddenly ended up in this realm, and even the princess had no answer. Not knowing much about the place himself, Lin asked the girl about the realm of decay. The princess explained that the place used to be an ancient little world, but during a grand battle, someone unleashed a skill that transformed the entire realm, ending it and turning everyone inside into rotting corpses. She warned that even though she didn't know more, they absolutely shouldn't let any zombie bite them. Otherwise, they would be tainted by the plague and become rotting corpses too. Just as she was explaining, a huge thunder crashed onto the ground, and Lin wondered if rain was about to fall. But he wasn't sure if it was water, as the liquid had a purple color. Suddenly, he sensed danger and immediately put up his skeletal armor. Before the rain could touch the princess, he protected her with his classic move, making her wear skeletal armor too. The lady was shocked but relieved that she was unharmed. Lin couldn't believe that even the abyssal teleportation stone was out of commission here, and he realized that the realm of decay was even more extraordinary than he had imagined. Since the princess knew about this realm, Lin thought she must also know how to escape. While killing multiple beasts to keep her safe, he asked her about it. The lady explained that her father once told her that their eastern clan rose to power because they took on the responsibility of guarding the realm of decay. At the heart of the realm, there lay a hidden dungeon with an ancient teleportation array that still pulsed with energy. It could offer a passage back to the human world. But Lin grew annoyed, realizing he was learning so much all of a sudden, when he thought the princess only knew the basic things they had discussed before. He wondered why she hadn't mentioned this earlier. The princess revealed that she had been too scared and forgotten everything. As the scene shifted again, we saw Lin and the lady traveling together, heading toward the center. Multiple zombies were drinking the poisoned water, and though it harmed them, they seemed unaffected. Lin spotted some lowly rotting corpses of level 5 and decided to massacre them for experience. He ordered his skeleton warrior to attack, and the warrior obeyed, slashing the rotting corpse in two. Lin told the princess they should move on, but she was shocked and told him to wait and look again. As Lin turned around, he saw that the corpse was regenerating at an insane speed and soon stood up again as if nothing had happened. The princess thought that the corpses couldn't be killed, but Lin knew something was off. He immediately used his soul flame attack but realized that the corpses had no souls, the flame couldn't latch onto them. Even corpse explosion was ineffective. That could only mean one thing: the corpses in front of Lin were not humans at all. They had been corpses from the very beginning. He couldn't believe it, as he knew that nothing in the world was truly immortal. There was always a way to kill it. They just hadn't discovered it yet. Lin summoned a skeletal mage who performed multiple spells that almost decimated the rotting corpses. But even after completely burning them to ashes, Lin didn't gain any experience points. His hunch was spot on. These corpses were not living beings and had never been alive. He looked at the princess, realizing that they had been transported straight from the royal world. The only ones who could tamper with their teleportation were royal insiders. Lin knew that even within the Eastern clan, unity was just an illusion. There were internal factions vying for power. He decided to tell this to the princess. The princess then admitted that the only person who could meddle with the teleportation array was her third uncle, an elite level 81 professional, immensely powerful, and holding a significant status in their clan. Lin grew furious, asking the princess if her uncle had sent him to the realm of decay, not caring whether he returned alive. The princess was shocked and told Lin that maybe her uncle never even considered they could make it back alive. After all, the realm of decay was a place where even divine powerhouses could perish if they weren't careful. And even if they did survive, they would likely return without any backing or status. Lin's face darkened with fury, realizing that in this world evidence was everything. Yet, deep down, fear crept into his heart. He told the princess with a grim look that he hoped when he returned to the human world and settled the score with her uncle, her family would choose the right side, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be spared. The princess was shocked, because no one had ever dared to threaten the Eastern family. And if Lin were to perish at the hands of the royal court, she feared the military would turn everything upside down. The princess decided she would definitely give the boy an explanation once they got back. But for the sake of the empire, Lin should grant her that chance. Lin turned around and looked at the lady, telling her that everything would hinge on the explanation she gave. So it had better leave him satisfied, or things would go really bad. But suddenly, a bolt of lightning from a Parpaltandra struck the ground, hitting a lowly corrupt corpse, which then suddenly upgraded into a level 10 monster. Lin wondered if this was some kind of evolution, as he realized that her lightning bolts had actually caused the corpse to evolve. He knew that the realm of decay had always been used as a battleground, where everyone fought at peril. A single careless move could spell Lin's doom right inside this realm. But perhaps it was also hiding some grand opportunity. Still, they first had to figure out a way to escape. The lady started guiding them through the dangerous terrains of the realm of decay, and soon, 2 days had passed since both Lin and the princess had entered this cursed place. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, the king was growing both angry and worried. He asked his guards if they had investigated every nook and cranny of the castle. All the elders remained silent until finally one of them gathered enough courage to speak. The elder informed the king that Master Zhang was already investigating the teleportation array and would arrive at the castle any moment. We come to know that Master Zhang was a level 89 array master, highly skilled and knowledgeable about teleportation circles. The king anxiously wanted to know if the master had discovered anything yet. But it was useless. Even the great array master couldn't unearth any clues about why the teleportation circle had malfunctioned. He confirmed that whoever tampered with it was extremely clever. The old man told the king that the teleportation array was in such chaos that even he, with all his skill, felt like he was entangled in a ball of yarn. The king demanded to know if there was truly no other way. But suddenly, something struck the master and he screamed, declaring that there was only one person who could solve this, none other than Old Mong, the master of Shangxia Tower. He was not just a dual-skill professional, but also a god-tier powerhouse, the foremost formation master of the human race, and the #1 alchemist of humanity. Old Mong was a total combo, and clearly not useless after all. The king decided to summon him at once and leapt into action, showing that even though he was old, he was still a powerful figure. As the scene shifted to the red crystal of the empire, everyone was shocked to see the king of the Eastern clan personally appearing among the civilians. The guards quickly cleared the area, announcing that the great king had arrived for an important meeting. The audience wondered why the king himself had come. Perhaps something monumental had occurred. Suddenly, the king was teleported inside the tower where Old Mong was standing. Old Mong was surprised to see the ruler of the Eastern realm, and wondered what could bring such an honored guest here. The king greeted Old Mong and explained about Lin and the princess's disappearance. The old man was shocked and asked how this could have happened. The king explained that the teleportation array had been tampered with, and that they had found no clues so far, realizing how grave the situation was. The old man immediately agreed to help and told the king to lead the way. They teleported out of the tower and headed straight for the royal palace. Once there, the king showed the old man the chaotic teleportation array. Old Mong saw that someone had skillfully thrown the formation's layout into disarray. The king anxiously asked if it could be fixed, and the old man reassured him that it wasn't impossible. He began using his powers as multiple golden streams of energy flowed into the teleportation circle, restoring its foundations. As he worked, the old man searched for the truth behind what had really happened. The king asked if the old man could find out where the princess and the divine general had gone. Old Mong closed his eyes, tracing the last coordinates they had visited, and even he was shocked. It was none other than the Realm of Decay, a forbidden place guarded by the Eastern clan for generations. The king couldn't believe it. The Realm of Decay was supposed to be sealed off-limits to everyone. The old man explained that a shattered firestone had briefly broken the seal, triggering a random teleportation that sent them there. But according to the king, the shattered firestone was not of human origin. It was an artifact used only by the abyssal demons. At that moment, the king realized that someone inside the royal palace must be secretly part of the cult of the damned. Old Mong also knew this cult. They were called devil worshippers. The old man warned the king that this matter had to be kept absolutely secret. If word got out and something happened to Lin, then the god of fury, Lu Sheng, along with the White Divine, would personally come for the king's head, and they would bring their army and formation masters with them. Old Mong also reminded the king that Lin's older sister was the sole disciple of yet another powerhouse, whose identity remained mysterious but whose strength was undeniable. The king, grasping the gravity of the situation, understood that if anything happened to Lin, both his clan and his crown would be doomed, and they might as well prepare to be sent off to the afterlife. The king was deeply anxious, his thoughts consumed by the terrible possibility that his little girl had fallen into the dreaded realm of decay. A cold sweat clung to his skin as he considered that he too might have to step into that cursed place, because, in his mind, there was no other way to enter except the method he had first considered. With a breath that shook with unease, the king turned to Old Meng and almost absent-mindedly instructed him to subscribe to the channel so he could get the latest chapters faster, as if clinging to routine could steady his nerves. Then, shaking off his own fear, he told Old Meng to calm down and follow him as they descended deep into the depths of the castle. The scene shifted to the hidden entrance of the Realm of Decay, concealed far beneath the royal palace. Here, a giant stone hovered unnaturally in the air, suspended by golden chains shimmering with spells cast by ancient mages. A golden magic circle pulsed around it, and Old Meng's eyes widened in disbelief as he realized that the king had such ancient godly formations hidden beneath his castle. The king, watching his reaction, explained that the entire setup had been passed down by their ancestors, a relic of power and duty. Understanding now what he needed to do, Old Meng stepped forward, began drawing out spirit energy from the formation, and called out for the gate to appear. A golden orb began to form above the rock, glowing brighter as a system notification appeared, announcing that the formation spirit was gathering, an ancient will designed to collect wisdom, and the higher its level, the longer it would take to fully manifest. As the orb stabilized, the formation spirit spoke, its voice echoing through the chamber to welcome Old Meng, telling him it had long awaited his arrival in the deep cave. It introduced itself as the spirit of the cursed formation, bound to guard the seal of the realm of decay and prevent the invasion of the decayed undead into the human world. Old Meng, wasting no time, declared that he wished to enter the realm immediately and asked the spirit to open the way. But the spirit refused, explaining that the portal to the realm of decay opened only once every 100 years, and during that cycle, no one could enter or leave. Old Meng clenched his fists, knowing he had no choice but to go in. His student and the king's daughter were trapped inside, and time was against them. Seeing Old Meng's determination, the spirit issued a grave warning. If he tried to force his way in, the formation would self-destruct, endangering everyone under its protection. A single misstep, even half a step beyond, would be lethal unless the person possessed divinity. Gritting his teeth, Old Meng asked the spirit how long until the portal naturally opened again, and the voice answered with chilling precision, 3 years, 12 days, 3 hours, 21 minutes and 55 seconds remained. Old Meng's face twisted in frustration. 3 years was far too long. Even waiting 3 days would be a death sentence for those trapped inside. But then, as desperation sharpened his mind, he asked the spirit what would happen if someone accidentally stumbled into the realm of decay. Was there any way they could find their way back? The spirit replied that at the heart of the realm, there existed an exit, and if a human managed to reach it, they could pass through and return. But just then, Old Meng's senses flared. He felt it. Someone was coming back from the exit of the realm of decay. The formation confirmed his suspicion, informing him of the precise location of the emerging portal. Fury boiled within Old Meng as he realized he now had a chance to confront the traitor hiding within the king's own family. Even the king, hearing this, grew pale with unease, knowing that the old powerhouses of the empire were already enraged by Len's disappearance. As soon as they were teleported to the location, Old Meng told the king that using the shattered firestone would leave abyssal marks on any human, making it easier to track them. But before they could act, a voice echoed through the ancient place, welcoming them to the residence of Dongfang. The king's heart sank as he realized that if the spirit had teleported them here, then the place still carried the taint of the abyss, with multiple signatures of abyssal energy lingering like ghosts. Taking command of the situation, the king ordered Dongfang to show himself at once. But as they stepped forward, they spotted a shadowy figure hiding behind a tall structure. It was Dongfang, or so it appeared. The king stormed forward, grabbed the man's shoulder and spun him around, only to find that the real Dongfang was unconscious and being controlled like a puppet. The true Dongfang had already escaped, leaving behind a scapegoat to mask his movements. Seeing through the trick, Old Meng clenched his fists in fury and told the king that he would personally issue a military wanted notice so the traitor could no longer hide. As for the empire, he left it in the king's hands, warning him that if anything happened to Lin or the Princess Zhao, it would trigger a clash between the empire's most dangerous powerhouses. With that, Old Meng departed, heading toward the kingdom tower, while the king remained rooted in place, his nerves fraying under the pressure. As the scene shifted, a powerful aura shook the kingdom tower, making everyone inside feel the presence of a god-tier powerhouse. High above, the prince's grandfather, who had been casually drinking tea, paused as an unsettling thought struck him, though he could not yet name its source. Meanwhile, inside the tower, both the old grandfather and another god-level powerhouse entered together, their faces dark with suspicion, as they wondered what crime they had committed to warrant such a sudden summons. The Eastern Battle Clan's powerhouse, having received a personal warning from Old Meng, stepped forward in silence. At that moment the king's command came, sharp and unyielding. They were to find the Eastern Lord, Dongfang, alive, or there would be dire consequences for the entire empire. If Dongfang was dead, then the king demanded to see the body with his own eyes. Both powerhouses agreed without hesitation, understanding that the peace of the empire hung by a thread. Once again, the scene shifted back to the realm of decay, where 2 grueling days had already passed. Lin and the princess wandered through the cursed landscape, searching desperately for the exit. Their so-called dungeon date had stretched into a survival ordeal, yet Lin remained calm, while the princess confided that her profession was that of a shield warrior, a rare and noble class tied to royal bloodlines, much like the ancient families who commanded legions. She explained that the shield warriors blended knightly defense with warrior aggression, possessing enough force to rival berserkers in sheer attack power. But even as she spoke of her proud heritage, deep inside, she knew the truth in front of this boy Lin. No profession could stand tall. Even she, a princess of the Eastern clan, found herself relying on his protection just to survive. Lin, unfazed by the decayed horrors surrounding them, displayed the true essence of a warrior as they pressed on. Acidic rain fell from the sky, burning the landscape and rotting the corpses strewn across the realm. Lin observed something strange. Every time the rain returned, the corpses evolved, growing stronger as though they were feeding off the storm itself. Intrigued, Lin's eyes lit up with a dangerous idea. He wondered aloud whether letting himself be struck by the lightning might awaken new power within him, just as it did for the undead. The princess stared at him in shock, unable to believe he could be so daring and so foolish at once. She demanded to know if he had truly lost his mind, her voice rising in panic, but Lin only smiled, calm and certain. He told her to stay put and not to move even a muscle, ignoring her frantic shouts as she begged him to reconsider. But Lin's grin only widened as he felt it deep in his bones. If his guess was right, this storm could make him stronger than ever before. Lin was running towards the thunderstorm relentlessly, without a care in the world, just like you guys who want to see the chapters the fastest. So please subscribe and hit the like. As soon as Lin got near the thunderstorm, a huge bolt of lightning struck him, and a purple aura surrounded him. Lin was feeling intense pain and agony as he braced the impact of the lightning bolt. But after it was finished, the boy was shocked as a system notification popped up, telling him that he had acquired the creation lightning experience of 100,000. Lin realized after reading the notification that getting struck by lightning grants the corpse's experience, so the decayed corpses were evolving after each strike. At a distance, even the princess was standing there, unable to believe that getting struck by lightning could grant experience. But more than that, she wondered how Lin was actually fine after getting struck by real lightning, and that too in a thunderstorm. But Lin was as calm as he could be, turning around and telling the princess that she should also try getting struck by it, so that she could gain some experience easily. But the lady knew that she could not withstand the sting of lightning and the relentless downpour of the rain, which also magnified the pain more than 100-fold. Lin just smiled as he turned around and activated his skeletal armor again, thinking that even though the experience points from the creation lightning bolts were pretty scarce, if they accumulated to a certain extent, it might just unleash some wondrous effects on the human body. As the scene shifted, several days had passed, and the princess was noticing that each time Lin encountered a thunderstorm inside the realm of decay, he eagerly walked right into the lightning strikes and gained some experience, while also enduring the extremely painful and excruciating process. But still, the princess wondered why Lin was doing so, because just for a few experience points, there wasn't a single maniac in the entire human world who would go through that. Perhaps Lin was the only one in all of humanity who could pull something like this off, which was both stupid and courageous. As the scene shifted back to the Empire, we saw 2 guards standing near the gate, guarding the king when someone approached them, and the guards were suddenly ready to fight, wondering who the person was. After all, intruding upon the royal palace was a grave crime. But as the camera zoomed out, we saw that it was none other than Lin's sister, who was angry as she approached the guards with her 2 swords, and even the wind could not stop her. She started a relentless barrage on the two soldiers, defeating them with just one slash, and warned them that if her little brother Lin were to face misfortune, then the entire Dong Fang clan would lose all reason to exist, and she would be the first one to kill the king. As the scene shifted back to the realm of decay, we saw that a huge thunderstorm had arrived, along with a typhoon wreaking havoc everywhere. But we all knew that our boy Lin was unaffected by such small things. Even the princess was shocked to see that the person in front of her was so calm and composed in this desperate situation. Both Lin and the princess were standing atop a cliff, and the lady immediately noticed some beasts hunting their prey below. She started screaming at Lin, telling him that those decayed corpses were the 13 great stone guards, along with abyssal hellhounds, who protect the realm of decay and don't let anyone pass. The abyssal hellhound was actually a rotten demon hound of level 40, who was ready to attack Lin with all its power and capabilities. But before the hound could even reach our boy, one of the skeletal warriors immediately stepped in front of his master and swung his sword relentlessly, killing the abyssal hound with just one slash. As Lin turned around and analyzed the surroundings, he saw that not only were the abyssal hellhounds there, but also people from the Dragon Clan professionals who must have been thrown into the realm of decay. Lin immediately realized that they were nearing the heart of the realm of decay, and their path to get out of there was close. But Lin was shocked as he looked at the typhoon and its eye. He wondered why the lightning storm from the storm cluster was mostly concentrated in the middle of the typhoon instead of striking the ground. He decided to check it out, no matter what. He immediately summoned his demonic wings, as it was quite perilous in the realm of decay. He told the princess to just wait for him and be a good girl, because she didn't have wings. The princess covered her face as Lin started lifting off from the ground, and even she realized that Lin's wings were making him almost teleport. It was so impressive that the girl found herself falling for him more with every passing second, wondering when Lin had awakened his flying skills, and how he was so professional even with a newly acquired skill. On the other hand, as Lin was flying, he tried to go above the typhoon so that he could see the epicenter with his own eyes. Lin was somehow excited, but suddenly a huge thunderstorm struck him again, and he started screaming in pain and agony as purple lightning shone through him. Lin was constantly gaining experience with each and every scream. With every burst of lightning, he gained 100,000 experience points, and after multiple strikes of lightning, he finally reached the epicenter and wondered what the white light coming from the middle was. Lin was fearless as he flew toward the light and stretched his hand out to see what it was. As soon as he touched it, he was absorbed into the center of the typhoon, and as he looked around, he saw that the lightning was coming from a creation staff, which was damaged. The system told him to repair the creation staff by absorbing the creation lightning so that it could be mended. Lin realized that the staff must be some kind of high-level equipment left from an ancient battle, so he decided to repair it no matter what. As Lin raised the staff into the air, multiple lightning strikes were attracted to it. But this time, Lin did not feel any pain. He immediately realized that he had to use his body as a conduit to channel the lightning of creation into the staff of creation. Even though Lin had no idea how many bolts of lightning it would take to fix the staff, he was sure that he was the only one who could withstand the damage and pull it off, thanks to his life summon link and other skills. As the scene shifted, quite a lot of time had passed and dust and debris were falling everywhere. The princess saw that the storm clouds had receded, and Lin suddenly descended. The princess wondered if Lord Lin was all right, but our boy calmly told her that for him, it was no problem at all. Lin acted as if nothing had happened, telling the princess that they should go to the heart of the realm of decay because he had a feeling they were about to uncover the exit in no time. Both Lin and the princess started heading toward the center of the realm, and Lin realized that he had been trapped in the realm of decay for over a month now. And even though he could not gain experience through the rotting corpses anymore, getting struck by the lightning of creation had actually powered him up to level 41. But unfortunately, the creation staff still remained silent and unrepaired. The couple finally arrived at the heart of the realm, which was full of poisonous gases, and both Lin and the princess were still under the protection of the overpowered skeletal armor, which Lin continuously powered with his mana. After observing the poisonous gas, Lin realized that he had already stepped into the level 60 zone, where the undead roamed freely, and it was truly a dangerous place. As Lin started going deeper, suddenly, a tentacle of a giant creature emerged from the poisonous waters and tried to attack the skeletal warriors first, as it didn't know whom to target. Lin immediately ordered one of his skeletal mages to use elemental explosion, and the blast was so powerful that the creature was brutally damaged and forced to surface. It was then that Lin saw that the creature was actually a stink octopus of level 60, which was continuously excreting a green poison extracted from rotten corpses. The system notification warned him that his skeletons were getting poisoned, but Lin immediately summoned the undead general and used the military heal technique to remove all status ailments from his legion members. This much power was enough to deal with any kind of creature below level 60, but since the octopus was exactly level 60, it was ineffective. The elimination by the undead general failed, and the poison still lingered. Lin knew that the princess had told him earlier that if corpse poison was not resolved properly, it would continue to accumulate and exist forever. As things were getting out of hand, Lin realized that he would have to summon his trump card once again, because otherwise, the situation could truly become dangerous. Lin started looking at the huge monster as it destroyed one of Lin's skeletal berserkers, and Lin knew that he needed to hurry the fight up because the rotten corpses could not be killed, and driving them along would be a real headache. Both the princess and Lin started in a link, but our boy had a lot of stamina, which was clearly making him go ahead of the princess and subscribe to the channel, so that he can get the new videos the fastest. Suddenly, one of the tentacles of the monster nearly got him, but before it happened, one of the skeletal mages threw a skill towards the tentacle and cut it in half, saving their master and the princess along the way. Lin tried to hide the princess behind him, and as he was doing so, multiple tentacles approached him and the lady, trying to do some naughty things. But before it came to fruition, the skeletal mages started launching multiple skills towards all the tentacles and blasted them into smithereens without much thought. But now Lin was really getting frustrated, knowing that the process they were following was too slow and it was not going to work out. Lin immediately summoned his blood-red wings and grabbed the princess by her back, making her blush intensely. But this was only the start of what Lin could do, and he started flying into the air like a flash, dodging and smashing the tentacles while making his way through so that he could save the princess while escaping. As the scene shifted, we came to a sharp cave edge, a cliff where Lin finally landed with the princess. The princess was blushing while realizing that she should show manners, thanking the divine General Lin because she knew that she had been holding him back. But still, Lin was not complaining at all, telling the princess with a serious look that it was no problem. He wanted the princess to be a good girl and just wait at the cliff for a moment so that Lin could handle everything and then come back. The princess agreed, and Lin made his skeletal armor disappear while flying into the sky with the creation staff in his hand, materializing it completely and gaining creation lightning experience through the staff. As Lin was now accustomed to lightning, he did not even flinch for a moment. Finally, it was time for his hard work and lightning strikes to pay off, because Lin suddenly leveled up. He knew that thanks to the lightning of creation, he had skyrocketed up by 2 whole levels. So he wondered about why hasn't the creation staff been repaired yet. Lin was not able to understand how much more lightning it would need to absorb before it could do anything. At first, he wondered what kind of weapon it really was. But suddenly, the staff started pulsating and produced such a blinding light that Lin had to protect his eyes with one of his hands. It was vibrating so intensely that Lin had to leave the staff where it was and fly away so he could see what was happening. As Lin got to a distance, he saw that a purple kind of energy started gathering around the staff, and now it was creating some kind of portal. After a while, Lin realized that it was actually a hidden realm portal. Lin knew that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him, and he did not waste any time, immediately flying inside the portal and teleporting somewhere else as a golden light surrounded him. As the scene shifted, we saw that Lin had finally entered the realm of creation, which was a vast land with greenery all over, giving an ancient yet fresh vibe. Lin noticed that the air inside the realm was absolutely refreshing, and it was far better than the realm of decay, where Lin and the princess had been stuck for multiple months. Lin started walking around the place, not knowing what to do. But as he started exploring the realm, he saw a corridor made of spherical pearls. It gave the impression of some kind of gateway, which was destroyed and looked pretty ancient. As Lin walked out, he saw a large sculpture of a lady with wings, grabbed by multiple tree roots. It was as if the lady was completely bound and stopped from falling due to the roots. But suddenly, Lin noticed that the staff of creation started levitating into the air, and its light was guiding the petrified statue as it started floating into her hands. As soon as the lady was bathed in the light of the staff of creation, she immediately became human with a truly godly attire. She started beaming with a golden aura, saying hello to the first human she had met after such a long time. She was the deity of life, radiant like the sun at dawn. Lin realized that this lady was a former deity of creation, and she had immense powers. The lady began explaining that she had not seen a scene like this in ages, and that this might be the last time she would witness it. She complimented Lin for making it so far, realizing that the boy must have had many glimpses of the wonders of the world outside, which was now called the realm of decay. It was then that the goddess revealed that the world outside, now known as the realm of decay, was once called the realm of creation. But then, another god who obliterated the goddess's world began harboring ill intentions and turned the outside world into a barren wasteland. He slaughtered everyone from the 3 clans, then took the life of the goddess. In the end, the man met his own demise too. But Lin didn't care much about all that. He simply asked the goddess to compare who was stronger, the divine beings of the world or the human race's powerhouses. The lady just smiled, knowing Lin was merely a curious kid, telling him that humans could exist on the same level as divine beings. These divine beings included the Obesity Demon King and the Dragon King of the Dragon Clan. She explained that divine beings were categorized into 3 tiers, low, middle, and high, and that she was a high-level deity, roughly equivalent to a level 97 god among humankind. Upon hearing this, Lin remembered Liu Sheng and White Divine, who were already legendary powerhouses at level 95 and above and stood at the pinnacle of the human race. But above the divine level, the gap between each rank was immense. Lin understood that even if the 2 joined forces, they couldn't stand against the goddess before him, and yet, even such a goddess had fallen to someone stronger. So Lin wondered what on earth had happened back then. The lady continued explaining while holding the staff of creation. She told Lin that the root of the epic battle from years ago lies within the staff. The lady was not the creation god from the start, but after she obtained the creation staff, she ascended and became the god of life. Lin realized the complexity of the situation and couldn't believe that something as simple as an artifact could turn someone into a god. He understood that his necromancer set was nothing compared to just one of these holy artifacts. The goddess, on the other hand, thanked Lin for bringing together the staff and the spirit, allowing her to have a few more enjoyable final moments and the chance to revisit the blossoms covering the realm. She explained that the creation scepter's life core had gone missing, but if fate allowed, Lin might be able to find it and restore the scepter to its once magnificent form. Even though the staff was actually a divine artifact, for mortals like Lin, if he could grasp the power within the staff, then there lay an opportunity to become a god-level powerhouse without much effort. But now, the lady started smiling as she realized that she had reached the end of her time and could no longer remain in the world of the living. She decided to give something to Lin as her final treasure, nothing other than an artificial core of life, forged with the last flicker of her strength. She knew that since Lin had been able to restore the creation scepter and enter the realm of creation, she could have faith that he would wield the staff of creation wisely. The staff was now powered up, and the system notification told Lin that he had 3 chances to attack with it. It now possessed the power of a level 90 human with 3 uses of divine might. But Lin was still curious. Before the lady disappeared, he asked if there was still a chance to bring her back to life. The lady only left a cryptic post, telling Lin that he would have to wait until he became a god-tier powerhouse himself. Then, and only then, would he come to know if there was a chance to revive her or not. The moment the former goddess revealed the truth of the past, the entire secret realm began to crack and fall apart right before Lin's eyes. Without warning, he found himself pulled back into the realm of decay. It was there he sensed something approaching from behind. An unknown entity had returned to attack once again. This time, the creature was charging at full speed, heading straight for the princess. The sight of such a strange and violent assault left her frozen in terror. As the attack neared her, Lin didn't hesitate. He instantly activated the skeleton armor, not just for himself, but around the princess as well. The very second the strike landed, it hit the protective barrier first, unleashing a massive explosion that shook the entire area and filled it with debris and dust. When the dust finally cleared, the princess, visibly shaken, turned to Lin and assured him in a trembling voice that she was all right. Without delay, Lin soared through the air toward her, but just as he reached her side, she murmured something that made him stop. It wasn't about him. She whispered in fear that the forest god general had emerged from the broken secret realm. Lin landed beside her and asked what was wrong. She pointed toward a radiant glow in the distance and said she had found the exit, but it was heavily guarded by powerful dragon troops and demonic rats. At the mention of an exit, Lin's eyes widened and he quickly asked where it was. The princess gestured toward the glowing light, and without another word, Lin scooped her up in his arms, ready to fly there. But just as he prepared to take off, she stopped him, warning that flying was not an option. Surprised, Lin asked why not, though he had already begun to lift off. That was when a massive hand lunged at him from behind. He barely dodged in time and turned to see a monstrous, decayed dragon warrior looming over him, its size overwhelming and its level unreadable. The creature was blocking every flight path he attempted. No matter where he tried to escape, the monster struck to intercept. Lin realized grimly that whatever clan this creature belonged to, its members had to be at least level 80. There was no way he could take something like this head-on. As Lin dodged through the air, trying to find an opening, the rotting dragon grew more agitated and opened its jaws. A surge of fire began to build in its mouth, its target clear, Lin. The princess, still in his arms, screamed in horror, recognizing it immediately. It was dragon breath, she cried out, repeating it with panic as flames gathered to be unleashed. With no safe escape, Lin knew his only choice was to stall for time. He summoned a legion of skeletons and linked them together so the impact of the dragon's attack would transfer to them. He sent some forward to engage the creature. As expected, the dragon launched its breath attack at the advancing skeletons, and Lin was quickly bombarded with alerts. 3 skeleton berserkers had been wiped out, followed by the elimination of a skeleton archmage and 23 archers. Tension surged through him. With each loss, the situation became more desperate. He couldn't afford to lose much more. And then, just as he tried to recalculate his options, his lightning wings reached their time limit and began to dissipate, breaking apart into fragments. Panic gripped him. Without his wings, his maneuverability was gone. Before he could recover, a new threat emerged. A grotesque demon even larger than the dragon warrior came lumbering forward. Its level was also unreadable. As it neared, it unleashed a brutal strike that tore through the remaining skeletons. Lin was bombarded with another flood of system notifications. 83 berserkers, 12 archmages, and 18 archers were all obliterated in a single moment. But then a new message flashed before him. A power skill had been activated. For the next 30 seconds, all base stats for him and his summoned creatures would be boosted by 200%, and their attacks would deal 500% more damage. Cooldown time, 1 hour. Reading this, Lin grit his teeth and thought to himself that at least for the next half-minute, his defenses would be significantly enhanced. He could only hope it would be enough to hold out. Eventually, he managed to reach the barrier that shielded the exit gate. Landing before it, he asked the princess if she could open it. She nodded, saying she could, but it would take a bit of time. Behind them, the horde of corpse monsters continued to demolish his skeleton army. Notifications kept coming in. 28 berserkers, 15 mages, and 19 archers had just been lost. More corpse demons arrived and began to wipe out what little resistance remained. The scene was descending into chaos. The ground was scorched, cracked from the impact of repeated explosions, and the air was thick with the scent of burning bone and rot. Lin clenched his jaw as he watched wave after wave of enemies encroach. He was running out of options. His skeleton count was dropping at an alarming rate, and no reinforcements were left to summon. He tightened his grip on the princess, shielding her from an incoming projectile. Just then, another system alert flashed in front of him. This time, 24 more skeleton archers and 13 berserkers were lost. The remaining archmages attempted to launch a final barrage of spells, but their mana reserves were nearly gone. Lin knew that within moments, his line of defense would completely collapse. The princess, sensing his growing desperation, whispered that the barrier was almost ready. Lin nodded, his eyes still locked on the approaching swarm. The corpse demons and dragon monsters were now just meters away. Their roars and screeches echoed like thunder in the decaying sky. He steadied himself and reached for the creation staff at his side, unsure whether he should use it yet. It was his last resort, something he hadn't even fully tested. Suddenly, the front line of monsters lunged all at once. Their twisted limbs stretched forward, claws extended, teeth bared as if the final blow was coming. Lin's hand hesitated over the creation staff. Could this be it? Was now the time? Before he could decide, a shadow dashed past him, so fast he barely registered it. In the next instant, several of the monster's arms were severed cleanly. Blood and ichor splashed through the air. A lone figure now stood between Lin and the advancing horde, calm, unmoving, with a sword in hand. Stunned, Lin looked at the newcomer. The figure turned slightly, just enough for Lin to see their face. His thoughts reeled at the realization this wasn't a monster. This wasn't some undead anomaly. This was a human. At first, Lin thought that the human corpse was actually protecting him. But then he realized that the creature was actually protecting the human race. Whoever came into the realm of decay and was human, even though the flesh of the creature had rotted away, the spirit had not yet perished, and he knew that he would have to protect the humans no matter what. The corpse lunged towards the monster and started slashing it with insane speed, while the princess told Lin that they should be going if they wanted to survive. A horde of decayed corpses and Dragon Clan professionals were gathering all around the place. Lin realized that the goal of these monsters was crystal clear. They wanted to subscribe to the channel to get the latest chapters of their series the fastest. The monsters did not want to do the guarding of the gate, and instead, they were after the Staff of Creation so they could gain enormous powers. But the human corpse, along with the skeletal warriors, was so powerful that they were slashing away the monsters in an instant without a hint of hesitation on their faces. Bigger monsters began to arrive, and the realm of decay was bombarded by these creatures. Just then, multiple human corpses arrived, and Lin realized that these were the bodies of ancestors from the human race. They were transcending life along with the will of time so they could protect their descendants for the future to come. Meanwhile, the princess was working with the gate that would help them get out of the realm of decay. Finally, she told Lin that they could escape the realm without wasting a moment. Lin wondered if there was any chance that, in the future, he would return to the realm of decay and meet the corpses once again to bring them back to life. But this had to wait because Lin and the princess needed to leave the realm first in order to survive. As the scene shifted to the entrance of the portal where the spirit was sealed, the spirit informed old Meng that someone was teleporting across the realm of decay and was coming to Earth. They were humans being teleported back from the realm, safe and sound. The king immediately arrived at the place, sensing something was going on. Even the old man was a bit surprised by the king's sudden arrival. Meng confirmed with the king once again whether only Lin and the girl were sent out. After the king agreed, Meng looked to see who was teleporting to Earth and saw that it was none other than Lin and the princess. The old man breathed a sigh of relief and told the king that he was lucky his family was now spared because Lin and the princess were all right. The general and the grandfather behind the king were actually relieved too, because their execution had depended on whether Lin was alive or not. The old man finally teleported back to the Red Tower while the king waited for their arrival. As the scene shifted again, we arrived at the great palace of the princess and the king. 5 minutes later, Lin and the princess were finally back in their home realm on the blue planet. Lin stood as calm and composed as he could be, while the princess immediately ran towards the king, hugged her father, and almost cried. Even when she thought she would never see him again because of Lin, she survived, and everything was fine now. The king assured her that she did not need to worry about anything. On the other hand, Lin was quite annoyed. He told the king of the Eastern family that they needed to give him an explanation about how such a thing could have happened. The grandfather immediately spoke up, telling Lin that they would definitely provide the general with an explanation regarding the matter and also offer sufficient compensation. This time, the Eastern family had no ego about being the king or ruler, and they fully acknowledged their mistake. Suddenly, the general spoke up just as Lin was starting to leave. He told him that his sister had been waiting for him for a whole month, and he wondered if Lin was going to visit her before going away. Lin was shocked, wondering where his sister was. The grandfather immediately informed him that she was waiting right outside the royal palace and wondered if he should take Lin there. But Lin was self-capable now. He immediately summoned his lightning wings and told the old man to sit back and relax while he went to see his sister, because he knew the place. The scene shifted to the gate of the royal palace, where his sister was standing without a moment of rest. She was deeply worried, wondering if she would be able to see her brother again. But as Lin descended and landed on the ground, she started running towards him and immediately hugged him like never before, crying and telling him that she believed her little brother would be fine even when things got dangerous. Lin just smiled, telling his sister not to worry because he was completely fine, though he wondered if she somehow knew he had fallen into the realm of decay. The system explained that even though she didn't know what went on inside the realm of decay, her master had figured out that Lin might be in danger, so she decided to come to the royal palace. She also explained that Lin had no idea, but when he got into trouble, a few of his teachers came to the royal palace and raised havoc until the Dongfang family assured them that they would do everything to bring him back. Lin was a bit nervous, wondering what the teachers' reaction would be. But his sister realized that since Lin had grown strong enough, she shouldn't worry about him all the time anymore because he had great mentors to guide him. Still, she was his older sister and cried and worried about him, no matter what. But she told Lin that seeing him safe and sound made her heart feel at ease. She told him to hurry and meet his teachers because they were anxiously waiting for his arrival. Lin was surprised, wondering what his sister was going to do. The girl explained that she would head back to grind some levels because she had been stuck at the royal palace for a whole month without leveling up, which made her teacher furious, even though she had just been waiting for her brother. Lin just smiled as his sister started walking away, waving goodbye. But he realized that her teacher must be a really tough individual. The scene shifted once again to the royal palace, where the princess was recounting everything that had happened inside the realm of decay in vivid detail. The king realized that the princess had survived only because Lin was there with her. The grandfather also realized that Lin was just too composed and calm for someone his age, and not even a realm full of corpses could shake him. Not only could Lin survive and escape the realm of decay, but he might even find fortune along the way. The grandfather was sure that even the mightiest warrior from the kingdom would not be guaranteed to return from the realm of decay without a scratch, but Lin had managed to do so. So the king declared that the princess and everyone else would take a break for 2 days, and after the rest period, they would personally go meet Divine General Lin and thank him for his courtesy and courage. As the scene shifted to the usual meeting place of the teachers and Lin, he was facing a barrage of questions from the 3 teachers he had served. Liu Sheng asked Lin how he met the goddess of creation and how he got the staff of creation, of all things. The man knew that if he could find the core of life, his chances of becoming a god-tier powerhouse would skyrocket. Meanwhile, Old Meng was a bit worried and told Lin that she really didn't think it was a good idea for him to overly rely on the staff of creation, as these were just extensions of humankind and shouldn't be depended upon too much. The White Divine interjected, telling the old man not to be a hypocrite since both of them had serious weapons, and the old man had the tower, which greatly enhanced his powers. Still, he acknowledged that what the other teacher said was correct. No matter the time, Lin should be his own most reliable support and should always increase his own strength. Lin assured the 3 teachers that he would not lean on external sources of power, no matter what. But he was still curious about something, so he asked if there was a chance for someone to come back to life after they die. The teachers were shocked by the question, but Lin was simply a curious child. White Divine had explained to Lin that resurrection was possible if a trace of the soul remained. In such cases, there was still hope, a fragile thread of possibility. But for a god-level powerhouse, death meant complete erasure. There would be no second chance, no return from the void. Lin had questioned why beings of such immense power couldn't be revived, but Liu Sheng had only offered a quiet, knowing smile, assuring him that he would understand the reason one day. Even though Liu Sheng had no idea what Lin had truly faced in the realm of decay, he could sense the change in his disciple. The boy standing before him no longer looked or felt like the same Lin. Despite holding the legendary staff of creation, the 3 monumental goals Lin had dreamed of, resurrection, recovery, and renewal, still remained far out of reach. Still, the White Divine's heart was light. His greatest student was alive. That was enough for now. Seeing the exhaustion in Lin's eyes, he let the boy off easily and told him to rest for the time being. In a few days, he promised, the Dongfang family would come knocking at their door to offer apologies. After all, they were of royal blood and their treasury overflowed with valuable items that could serve as peace offerings. He advised Lin not to act impulsively and reassured him that, when the time came, he himself would help the boy deliver a satisfying beating to Dawen, the very man who had cast Lin into the forsaken realm of Sadvi. Old Meng, observing quietly, eventually stepped forward and asked how Lin had been these past months. His tone was calm, filled with gentle concern. Lin admitted he only wanted rest and time to recover. Old Meng nodded, encouraging him not to worry. His teachers were no ordinary mentors. They were professionals at navigating political waters and pulling the right strings. Nothing bad would be allowed to happen to him. Although those words brought some unease to Lin's heart, he eventually accepted them and excused himself, walking away from the old master's courtyard. The summer capital academy was quiet when Lin returned. As he walked its familiar paths, his thoughts remained heavy. Was there truly no way to bring the ancestors back? No hidden route to return the dead to life in full, not as fragments or echoes, but as living, breathing people? He didn't have long to dwell on it. A gentle tap on his shoulder caught him off guard. Turning sharply, he found himself staring into a face that melted the tension from his chest, Enning Yi. Her smile was bright, her presence soothing. She told him she had finally completed the task her grandfather had set for her. Having been sent away to grow stronger, she had succeeded in completing her second-class change. She was now a level 40 shadow stalker, a transcendent of her profession. Yet despite the power she had gained, she admitted that the only thing she'd truly missed was seeing him again. She wanted to hear everything, every event, every turn in Lin's journey since they last parted. And with a playful glint in her eye, she hinted that she had a few surprises of her own to show him, rewards for surviving, for enduring, for coming back. That evening the two sat quietly along the tranquil coast of Phenosha. The sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson as the sea whispered beside them. They spoke for hours, sharing everything they had bottled up, laughing, crying, comforting one another. As the light faded, Enning gently rested her head on Lin's shoulder, her unspoken affection passing between them like a warm breeze. She didn't need to say it. She was here now, and she wasn't going anywhere. 2 days later, the dungeon hall buzzed with energy as Lin and Enning stepped inside. She had been eager to return to dungeon crawling with him, and her excitement was evident as she said how much she missed it. As they moved through the crowd, a wave of recognition swept the room. Professionals and adventurers alike began whispering, pointing, and then openly cheering. Many stared in disbelief, calling out that the legendary dungeon god had returned. Lin, ever composed, took the attention in stride. The onlookers were more curious about Enning now, puzzled by her identity and wondering how she had managed to land such a powerful partner. After all, teaming up with the divine general himself for a dungeon run was no small matter. Enning seemed amused by the attention, remarking with a soft laugh that Lin really was incredible. She pointed out how everyone was starring and how different things were from before. Lin simply replied that compared to the great sages of the human race, he was still insignificant. But Enning, unwavering in her belief, insisted that one day he would surpass them all, defeat the Dragon Clan, and even purge the abyss itself. As the commotion died down, they turned their attention to picking their next dungeon. Lin mentioned wanting to level up, and Enning's eyes immediately lit up as she suggested the Beast God Plateau. She explained that it was perfect for classes between level 40 and 50, offering high experience gains. There were 2 major dungeons at the hall, the Tyrant Desert, which they had already conquered, and the Beast God Plateau, which was ripe for the taking. Lin considered her suggestion carefully before agreeing. The Beast God Plateau it would be. The moment he touched the crystal at the center of the hall, the information sprang to life. The display showed the instance. Beast God Plateau, level 45, with a maximum entry limit of 50 players. Records of past teams and completion times scrolled beneath it, highlighting the many attempts and achievements within. The dungeon records refreshed, each time blinking with competitive tension. Genesis Academy clocked in at 6 hours, 29 minutes and 18 seconds. Creation Academy followed closely with 6 hours, 52 minutes and 1 second, while Flame Emperor Academy trailed at 6 hours, 53 minutes and 31 seconds. The moment the crowd saw the updated records, the hall exploded with a wave of excitement. From every corner, voices rose. One person shouted that General Lin was going to challenge the Beast God Plateau, stunned that he might even break the record for a large-scale dungeon. Another voice carried through the noise, marveling at the girl with him and declaring how lucky she was to be taken along for a solo run. A third voice chimed in, remembering how General Lin had once soloed the Tyrant Desert and confidently assuming that the Beast God Plateau would be nothing in comparison. The admiration spread like wildfire, and with the eyes of the entire hall on them, Ramses and Enning Yi stepped into the dungeon. At that exact moment, a new group arrived, large, well-organized, and exuding strength. The atmosphere in the dungeon hall shifted as soon as people recognized the newcomers. It was the Yan Huang Academy team, their arrival causing an audible stir. Someone recalled with urgency that today marked exactly 3 years since the true form of the beast god had respawned. Another voice picked up the thread of memory, reminding everyone how the 3 great academies had once fought bitterly over it, and in the end, Genesis Academy had taken the prize. As if summoned by the memory, the elite team from Genesis Academy entered the dungeon hall, fully geared and ready for confrontation. Their appearance sent a ripple of hushed murmurs through the crowd. The presence of Genesis Academy meant only one thing: the 3 great academies were once again going to clash over the beast god's true form. Speculation buzzed through the hall. Someone mentioned the massive rewards granted to whoever defeated the true form of the beast. Curiosity followed, as people began to wonder who would reach it first this time. A quieter voice offered a note of caution, pointing out that this time General Lin was already inside the dungeon. Another replied confidently with unwavering belief in General Lin's abilities. Yet another echoed that sentiment, but admitted it would not be easy, since Lin now faced the top elites of all 3 academies. Even as speculation swelled, Genesis Academy's team vanished into the dungeon, and the race began. Inside the dungeon, Enning Yi had assumed she would be grinding levels slowly but comfortably. She had prepared accordingly, pulling out a pile of snacks and laying them out in front of her. Her plan had been to sit, relax, and enjoy herself while gaining experience beside MK. However, the moment Lin Ramses summoned his side army to clear out the monsters, her assumptions shattered. His skeleton warriors emerged like a disciplined legion, and she could only sit and watch in stunned silence as they moved with terrifying strength and precision. They weren't like the weak minions she remembered from before. She stared for a few moments, trying to understand how the skeletons had become so powerful. It dawned on her quickly that she really didn't need to do anything here. She could just enjoy her food and watch the massacre unfold. Lin gave a few terse commands, and his undead soldiers spread out in all directions, swiftly hunting down the monsters that lurked in every corner of the dungeon. Waves of level 46 wolves were wiped out in seconds. The skeletons returned experience points ranging from 900,000 to 920,000 each, along with various types of loot and energy that kept flowing non-stop. From her makeshift picnic spot, Enning Yi observed it all with growing delight. Compared to grinding solo, this method was on a whole other level. Leveling like this was absurdly efficient. She couldn't stop smiling as she reached for another snack. Then, without warning, Lin appeared at her side. In one smooth motion, he scooped her up in his arms and soared into the sky. It happened so fast that she didn't even have time to react. He held her securely as they flew through the vast dungeon expanse. The wind rushed around them, and Enning's heart fluttered uncontrollably. In that surreal moment, she realized she was flying. Something in her chest tightened as she stared up at him. He had become incredible in just a few days. She couldn't help but glance at him repeatedly, too shy to speak, overwhelmed by how calm and focused he looked. They flew above cliffs and ridges until they reached a steep highland area, dark, foreboding, and shaped by ancient erosion. Lin brought them down gently near the edge of a high plateau. He explained that the Beast God Plateau had 4 highlands in total, and that the deeper one went, the stronger the monsters became. Most of the dungeon's rarest loot was found in the final highland zone. They landed near the entrance of one such area, what Lin identified as the Divine Plateau, the second highland. After briefly surveying the terrain ahead, He muttered with a touch of concern that their luck today wasn't great. They had only just reached the second highland and had already encountered a boss. The boss of the plateau turned out to be the highland giant tiger, an enhanced elite boss at level 47. It had a strength of 60,000, agility of 30,000, spirit of 10,000, and a massive constitution of 80,000. Its skill set included Roar and Tiger's Paw Slam. Lin realized this boss might cause some trouble, so without hesitation, he ordered all his skeletal warriors into berserk mode. They immediately charged toward the tiger, attacking relentlessly and leaving no opportunity for it to counterattack. The barrage continued without pause, and finally a system notification appeared, announcing that Lin had slain the highland giant tiger. He received a massive amount of experience and obtained a valuable item, the Sword of the Giant Tiger, a platinum-grade weapon that increased all attributes by 1,200 and amplified warrior skills by 50%. Meanwhile, Enning Yi stood in awe, wondering when Lin's skeleton army had become so overwhelmingly powerful. The elite boss of the plateau had been taken down in an instant, without even managing to fight back. But Lin remained calm. Turning to her, he said they should hurry and head to the last plateau to claim the real rewards. Both Lin and Enning Yi began running toward the final area, and along the way, the girl explained that the dungeon was called the Beast God Plateau. It featured 2 forms of the Beast God, and according to legend, the Beast God was a deity whose true form refreshed in the dungeon once every 3 years. The rewards given depended on how quickly the true form was defeated. She added that the last team from the Creation Academy had taken 40 minutes to bring the Beast God down, and in the end, they had only received a small shard of the Beast God bone, a valuable material later used to craft boss tier accessories. Lin smiled as he realized the rewards were directly tied to how fast the true form was defeated. With that in mind, he decided to go all out without holding back. As the scene shifted, Lin and Enning Yi stood before a long bridge leading to the final plateau. The bridge was crawling with blue snakes and ended at a massive snake monument on the other side. Strangely, the monument gave off the eerie feeling that it might be alive. Enning Yi was horrified at the sight of so many snakes, but any fear quickly vanished in Lin's presence. Without a second thought, he activated his lightning wings, picked her up effortlessly, and soared across the bridge like it was nothing. Enning Yi instinctively clung to his neck, increasingly impressed by his composure and strength. Below them, snakes and monsters tried to intercept, but Lin's skeletal warriors made quick work of the threats, cutting down the level 47 canyon giant pythons with brutal efficiency. Lin didn't need to lift a finger. While he flew forward, his minions handled everything, harvesting both experience and loot from the swarming wide-eyed snakes, pythons, and reptilian monsters. Meanwhile, the Genesis Academy team arrived at the same snake bridge. Unlike Lin and Enning Yi, they encountered no obstruction this time. Their team leader urged everyone to move faster, determined not to let the Creation or Flaming Academies surpass them. He reminded them how, 3 years ago, the Creation Academy had been just one step ahead. Though they had defeated the Beast God's true form, they had taken too long and had received only a meager reward. But this time, Genesis Academy was ready to reclaim its honor by finishing the boss fight quickly. However, just as they began to cross the bridge, they were halted by the sight of a massive tiger standing on an open battlefield ahead. Surrounding it were people from all 3 academies, struggling to bring it down. In another scene, the ongoing dungeon fight was being projected in a special room through magic, allowing several higher-ups to observe it in real time. The director of Genesis Academy turned to the director of Creation Academy and remarked that although Creation had won last time, this time Genesis would be the one taking home the rewards. The director of the Creation Academy, an elderly man, remained quiet while the director of Flaming Emperor Academy, a woman named Lao, confidently claimed that their academy would take the top reward this time. But suddenly, Old Man Yi noticed something unusual on the screen. He narrowed his eyes and zoomed in using projection magic. There, he saw Lin and Enning Yi traveling together, too closely in his opinion. His expression darkened as he stamped his foot in frustration, anger simmering at the sight. He muttered to himself that the boy had better let go of his granddaughter, insisting in no uncertain terms that she would not be with him. None of the directors could believe that the mighty divine General Lin had actually ventured into the Beast God Plateau dungeon and was already on the verge of conquering the third plateau. The old man, watching closely, came to a quiet realization. The champion this time would undoubtedly be Lin. But what lingered in his thoughts was how long it would take for Lin to bring down the true form of the Beast God. The director of Genesis Academy reminded everyone that the previous record for defeating the Beast God's true form was 37 minutes. However, today, he believed that record was destined to be broken, because the one challenging it was Lin, the boy infamous for shattering every record set before him. As the scene shifted, Lin and Enning Yi dropped onto the fourth plateau after clearing the third without much effort. Landing near the bridge, Enning Yi quickly began explaining that the real challenge of the Beast God Plateau dungeon was almost entirely concentrated in this final stretch. Everyone referred to the fourth plateau as the Boss Plateau, because no ordinary monsters appeared there, only Predator-class bosses that attacked without hesitation or thought. Unbeknownst to them, two monsters, a Highland tiger and a giant python, were quietly stalking them from behind, clearly intending to make Lin their prey. But before either beast could launch an attack, Lin's skeletal warriors responded in full force, unleashing a relentless offensive that wiped out both monsters instantly. The level 47 boss monsters fell in moments, and Lin hadn't needed to lift a finger. As he moved deeper into the fourth plateau, Lin quickly noticed that every monster he encountered was actually a boss monster from the earlier plateaus, now appearing here in overwhelming numbers. Smirking with confidence, he realized it had been a long time since he'd last obliterated mobs within seconds, and this looked like the perfect time to have some fun. Following his orders, skeletal warriors began spreading out in all directions across the fourth plateau, tasked with gathering as much information as possible. Back in the observation chamber, the directors watched closely, speculating about Lin's goal and how he intended to deal with the powerful leaders of the fourth plateau who would stop at nothing to eliminate him. One director stressed that the fourth plateau was to be approached with utmost caution. Even their top-tier divine creation team needed 2 hours to clear it, and no individual, no matter how strong, could get through it quickly. Meanwhile, the female director from the Flaming Academy turned toward Enning Yi's grandfather, curious about how long he thought Lin would take to bring down the beast god of the forest and conquer the plateau. Though the old man hated Lin to his core, he also had first-hand knowledge of the boy's power. With quiet certainty, he stated that Lin would do it in 10 minutes. The room went silent. The other directors were stunned, some thinking the old man had lost his mind or eaten something bad. To them, such a feat was impossible. Noticing their disbelief, the old man simply told them to wait and watch. Only then would they witness the chaos that was about to unfold on the fourth plateau. Back on the battlefield, the skeletal warriors appeared to be fleeing from a giant tiger and bear. In reality, they were luring all the boss monsters into a narrow dead end, a perfect setup for an ambush. Lin and his forces had already prepared a trap. Skeletal sharpshooters had arrows nocked and ready, while skeletal mages stood poised to release devastating spells at a moment's notice. As the tiger and bear finally reached the trap, they sensed too late that something was wrong. The first wave of arrows and magic rained down without warning. Explosions erupted across the battlefield as Lin, standing calmly with a dark glow in his eyes, watched the unfolding spectacle with a small, satisfied smile. He knew what was coming, and he was more than ready to enjoy the show. As soon as a large number of beast corpses gathered in one place, Lin wasted no time. He activated his corpse explosion skill. One by one, violent blasts erupted across the battlefield, each detonation consuming more of the surrounding monsters in its fiery radius. Beasts caught in the explosions howled in pain, their bodies torn apart in a matter of moments. In just seconds, what had once been a chaotic swarm of enemies was reduced to nothing more than a scorched field littered with burnt, dismembered remains. Thick smoke filled the area, curling into the air like fog, while the ground beneath was scarred with small craters, each marking the impact of destruction. When the smoke finally cleared and the dust settled, the only thing left in view were the charred, lifeless bodies of monsters sprawled across the ground. The entire sequence had been broadcasted live on a large display, where a group of Academy seniors were watching in stunned silence. The directors, frozen in disbelief, exchanged glances before one of them finally spoke up, his voice still reeling from the shock. From the moment Lin launched his first attack, it had barely been 10 seconds, and yet everything was over already. Another director, equally baffled, muttered that Lin hadn't even needed the full 10 seconds to end it all. Standing beside them was Ming, and even he looked astonished. He had always known Lin was powerful, but witnessing this firsthand had left him at a loss. Inwardly, he admitted to himself that even though he'd heard about Lin's capabilities, this was the first time he'd seen him in action against monsters, and never in his wildest imagination had he expected the fight to be over in an instant. The mood shifted as one of the senior observers laughed, unable to hold back his admiration. He said he wanted to extend an invitation to General Lin to join their Creation Academy. But before the idea could gain traction, a woman standing nearby crossed her arms and responded with a sulky tone, stating that there was no way that would happen. Creation Academy already had more than enough geniuses. According to her, Lin would be a much better fit for Yang Academy. The man frowned at her words, irritation bubbling to the surface as he raised his voice, declaring that Creation Academy was clearly the top among the 3 great academies, and by that logic, Lin should belong with them. However, Lu Yan wasn't about to let such a claim pass unchallenged. With a scoff, he pointed out that even if Lin did join their academy, what resources would be left for him? And besides, who had even acknowledged that Creation Academy was the best of the 3 in the first place. Meanwhile, the director of Genesis Academy, who had been silent until now, appeared visibly tense. Sweat beaded down his face as he listened to their heated exchange, saying nothing. The others noticed his strange demeanor and stepped closer, peering at him with suspicion. Something seemed off, and one of them asked him directly if something had happened. The Genesis director placed a hand on his forehead, and after a moment of hesitation, quietly admitted that General Lin had already joined their Genesis Academy. That revelation hit them like a lightning strike. The 2 others stared at him in complete disbelief, blurting out in unison that what he was saying had to be nonsense. The woman pressed further, demanding to know when this had supposedly happened. The Genesis director replied that it had been a few days ago. But before he could continue, another director pointed an accusing finger at him and demanded to know the truth. What trick had he used to recruit Lin? What kind of offer had he dangled to secure such a powerhouse? Anger flared in the Genesis director's eyes as he fired back that it was no trick. What nonsense were they even talking about? He clarified that it had been none other than Lin's own teacher, the White Divine, who had personally brought him over to Genesis Academy. The bickering intensified until Senior Enning, having heard more than enough, raised his voice and ordered everyone to be quiet. The Beast God's true form was about to appear. At that very moment in the Beast God realm, Lin arrived at Plateau number 4 alongside Enning Yi. Before them stood a towering gate, flanked by a massive stone statue. The instant the statue detected their presence, a powerful aura surged from its core. That aura spiraled into the sky, triggering a dramatic shift in the surrounding environment. A whirlwind began to form above them, and as the pressure mounted, the runes carved into the plateau and the statue itself began to crack and shatter. Lin stood frozen in awe. He could barely believe what he was seeing and muttered aloud that this must be the true form of the Beast God. But the moment he caught a faint glimpse of the figure within, he stiffened, a jolt of recognition shooting through him. He gasped as he realized he had seen beings like this before. Explosions followed, rumbling across the plateau as the statue started to crumble. Lin instinctively pulled Enning Yi back to a safer distance. Within seconds, the statue collapsed completely, and from its ruins emerged a creature that made Lin's breath catch in his throat. He stared at it, a wave of disbelief washing over him as he realized this was something he had encountered in the corpse world. The very atmosphere around them began to distort. The skis shifted, the earth trembled, and a system notification echoed in his mind. The true form of the Beast God has awakened. Freed from its stone prison, the Beast God roared, a deafening, guttural sound that shook the land for miles. But even as the ground quaked under its power, Lin wasn't paralyzed by fear. He remained locked in a trance of realization, eyes fixed on the creature before him. He couldn't deny it anymore. What he had seen back in the corpse world, it had to have been the same being, this Beast God. Standing tall before Lin, the beast god's glare burned with furious energy. At that moment, a new data panel unfolded before Lin's eyes, revealing its terrifying attributes: level 55, strength at 120,000, agility at 100,000, spirit at 50,000, physique at 130,000. The skill list confirmed its destructive potential. It could wield world-ending strike, a devastating blow capable of flattening entire armies, and sweep across the army, a wide-area technique designed to erase everything in its path. Its traits granted it a 30% reduction in both physical and elemental damage, enhanced attack power, and enhanced speed. Lin narrowed his eyes, absorbing the details. There was no doubt left in his mind. He was facing a true calamity. Looking at the beast god's attributes, Lin couldn't help but smile. To most, the numbers were terrifying: strength, agility, spirit, and physique far beyond the norm, but to him it was nothing new. With calm confidence, he muttered that these attributes were certainly powerful, even surpassing bosses of the same level found in the eternal trial grounds. But having already encountered the beast god's likeness in the corpse world, he felt no fear. How could he be afraid now? Beside him, Enning Yi was trembling. The sheer pressure emanating from the beast god's true form was suffocating, and her instincts screamed at her that this being before them was a true catastrophe. She couldn't believe this was its genuine form. It was simply too overwhelming. Breaking the tension, Lin turned his head slightly and asked her if it was true that the faster one killed, the better the reward. Still visibly shaken, Enning Yi nodded and confirmed it softly, saying yes, the reward scaled with speed. At her confirmation, Lin let out a light laugh, his tone both casual and filled with anticipation. Then if I kill it instantly, how big would the reward be? With that, he activated his entire arsenal of skills at once. In one hand, he summoned Soul Flame. In the other, he began preparing a devastating explosion. Simultaneously, he cast the Aging Curse Chain, a powerful control spell. The chain spell launched forward at high speed and quickly ensnared the beast god, wrapping tightly around it and restricting its movement. Without hesitation, Lin hurled the Soul Flame directly at the beast god's face. The attack landed squarely, and a loud, agonized scream erupted from the creature as it recoiled in pain. Watching its suffering, Lin muttered with a cold smile that, with the 200% enhancement from Strong Soldier, his spirit attribute had now surpassed 150,000, making the damage dealt by Soul Flame immensely more lethal than usual. Bound by the curse chain and engulfed in the burning Soul Flame, the beast god thrashed violently, its roars echoing across the land. It dropped to the ground, clutching its head and writhing in torment. To end things swiftly, Lin summoned his undead army: Skeleton Mage, Skeleton Archer, and Skeleton Warrior. The Mage and Archer unleashed long-range assaults, raining down spells and arrows, while the Skeletal Warriors stormed forward with massive swords in hand. They surrounded the beast god and began slashing relentlessly, cutting through its defenses with merciless precision. Within moments, the towering beast god collapsed completely. It let out a final shriek before its body fell still, and a thick aura burst from within, rising skyward like smoke from a dying fire. Watching the scene unfold from afar, Enning Yi gasped and instinctively brought her hand to her mouth, stunned. She whispered to herself in disbelief, wondering if she was dreaming. Back at the display where the senior officials were observing, a wave of stunned silence followed. Lu Yan, wide-eyed and speechless, finally murmured that he had lived for decades, but never once had he seen such an unbelievable scene. Liu Aogyuan, still trying to process what he'd just witnessed, questioned aloud whether they were even watching the correct footage. Mo Xing, however, remained fixated on the display and commented simply but firmly that General Lin truly lived up to his name. It was then that Senior Enning's voice cut through the chatter, calm but firm. He reminded them all not to spread what they had seen. Everyone present knew the political tension surrounding Lin. If word of this performance got out, there would be no shortage of enemies ready to do anything, including assassination, to eliminate him. The room grew quiet again as everyone nodded in understanding. They all knew how dangerous this world could be when one stood too far above the rest. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield where the beast god had been slain, a large, radiant red orb of energy materialized above its remains. Lin reached out and touched the orb, triggering a reward sequence. several rare items emerged one after another. The first was the beast god's leg bone, a relic left behind before the creature had ascended into divinity. It contained a fragment of its divine essence. The second was even more astonishing, beast god essence blood, a rare material especially valuable to physical class fighters. It dramatically increased the chance of advancing to the third-tier class and carried with it a small probability of awakening rare talents. Back at the display, one of the instructors named Sandeep leaned in and exclaimed with wide eyes, "Beast God Essence Blood!" His voice carried both excitement and disbelief, unable to hide just how valuable that item was. The old man had suddenly disappeared, and all the directors were left stunned by his abrupt reaction. They looked at each other, confused, wondering where Senior Enning had gone and why. Meanwhile, Lin stood in place, staring at the rewards he'd just received, still reeling from their value. As he examined each one, he realized that the beast god's blood could only be used by physical class fighters. And although the shard of the beast god's leg bone wasn't as significant as the divine finger bone he had once obtained, it still held a similar divine property. Unfortunately, neither item was of any real use to him anymore. So after thinking it over, he decided to gift them to Enning Yi. At first, she firmly refused, telling him that she didn't need any treasures as long as he was with her. All she wanted was to stay by his side. But Lin simply smiled at her words and gently patted her head, insisting that she should take them. He assured her that he already had even greater treasures in his stash, and these weren't that important to him anymore. Reluctantly, Enning Yi agreed, deciding to keep the 3 items safe for him. She told him that if the day came when he needed them, she'd return them without hesitation. Until then, they would remain in her care. But their peaceful moment was quickly broken by a harsh, aged voice. It was the old man, Senior Enning, who had returned and now glared at Lin. He demanded Lin take his hands off his granddaughter. Enning Yi turned quickly, shocked to see her grandfather standing there, while the old man's expression was one of both anger and concern. Lin, on the other hand, remained completely calm. He asked, in a composed voice, what brought the old man there so suddenly. Ignoring the question for a moment, the old man's eyes fell on the items in Lin's possession. He was astonished. He asked whether Lin had really managed to obtain both the beast god's leg bone and the divine blood, and if the boy even understood their worth. Lin knew full well that, while he had no need for the items, it didn't make them any less rare. The old man then explained that the divine essence within the leg bone could help a high-level powerhouse reach new heights, rapidly increasing their energy and drastically raising their chances of becoming a god-tier being. As for the beast god's blood, it could directly boost the chances of a third-tier class transformation by 15%. But more importantly, it could be refined into a divine blood elixir, doubling the transformation success rate to 30%. Lin immediately understood. The old man hadn't come just to explain things, he had a motive. So Lin asked him directly if he was trying to strike a deal for the 2 items. The old man, impressed by Lin's awareness, nodded and elaborated. In order to create the divine blood elixir, they would need additional precious materials, and most importantly, a highly skilled alchemist, something Lin currently lacked access to. Just 1 drop of the beast god's blood could produce 3 doses of the elixir. The old man proposed that Lin hand the 2 items over, and once the potion was brewed, Lin would receive one of the 3 as his share. Lin fell into thought. He hadn't imagined the beast god's blood was worth so much. But in the end, he trusted the old man. After all, Senior Enning himself was a god-tier powerhouse. Lin eventually agreed to the proposal. Just as the old man started chuckling in satisfaction, Lin asked one final question: who was he planning to use the elixir on? Hearing this, the old man broke into a full laugh, saying that he had only 1 granddaughter. If he didn't give her his all, then who else was he supposed to give it to? Lin had been right on the mark. He had guessed from the start that the divine elixir was meant for Enning Yi. Hearing her grandfather's words, the girl stepped forward, retrieving both the bone and the blood from her storage. She handed them over to her grandfather for further processing. The old man was momentarily frozen in place, clearly shocked. He couldn't understand how the beast god's blood had ended up with her. Enning Yi smiled, explaining that Lin had gifted them to her. But now that he had made a deal with her grandfather, she no longer needed to keep them and was returning them to him. The old man was speechless. He had assumed Lin still had the treasures, but to find out they were in his granddaughter's hands the whole time left him baffled. Enning Yi corrected her grandfather gently, saying she had just been holding them for Lin. Technically, since it was a gift, he wasn't wrong either. Now visibly frustrated, the old man turned his anger back toward Lin, scolding him for not mentioning that he'd already given the items to his granddaughter. But Lin just gave him an innocent look and replied with a light tone, saying, "You never asked." Grumbling under his breath, the old man snatched the items from Enning Yi and declared firmly that these treasures held the potential to help one reach true divinity, and even God-tier powerhouses would seek them without hesitation. But then came the most unexpected shock of all. The old man, Senior Enning, was actually prepared to offer his granddaughter to Lin in return for the two God-tier items. Now that the deal had been struck, he insisted that Enning Yi should stay with Lin from now on. Enning blushed furiously, clearly flustered. She scolded her grandfather, saying that this was hardly the time to make such a deal. But despite her embarrassment, it was obvious that for Lin, this turn of events was a pleasant surprise. He couldn't resist teasing her, joking that Senior Enning had traded her away for a mere chunk of the beast god's leg bone. Enning Yi was mortified, unable to believe what she was hearing. Even though she secretly wished for this outcome all along, she tried to stop him, telling Lin to quit it already. The scene then shifted back to the director's hall. The entire group was stunned to see Senior Enning return. They all knew where he had gone, straight to Lin, and immediately asked whether the treasures Lin had acquired after defeating the true form of the beast god were what they thought. With a pleased expression, the old man took the items from his inventory and placed them before the council. He confirmed that, yes, these were indeed the beast god's leg bone and its divine blood. The directors were taken aback, realizing just how fortunate Lin truly was. Possessing both items, he now had the means to reach power equivalent to god-tier status. However, the lady director offered a different perspective. She believed Lin wasn't merely lucky, he was genuinely strong. That strength, not luck alone, was what had earned him such rare rewards. But then came another twist. The old man explained that these two treasures no longer belonged to Lin, they were now in Senior Enning's possession. The lady director asked how he had managed to negotiate with the divine general himself. This question made the old man break into a sweat. He clearly didn't want to reveal that, as part of the arrangement, his beloved granddaughter was now Lin's girlfriend. Before the discussion could go further, the mood in the hall turned serious. One of the directors stepped forward and asked if they could examine the beast god's leg bone. Many of them were stuck just beneath the threshold of god-tier strength, and this item could help push them across that final line. Despite his usual pride, the old man still valued his longtime comrades. He summoned the bone into the center of the hall. At his gesture, the three senior directors sat down around it and began to meditate, channeling their energy to absorb its divine aura. As the director of Genesis Academy focused, a powerful transformation began. He was drenched in sweat, yet calm, his breathing steady as energy surged through every pore. Senior Enning watched closely and immediately recognized what was happening. Among all the directors, the Genesis Academy head was the closest to god-tier strength. And now, aided by the beast god's leg bone, he had finally crossed the barrier. Suddenly, the director's eyes shot open. A surge of overwhelming power exploded from his body, enveloping him in a brilliant golden aura. The divine pressure radiating from him was felt throughout the kingdom. Senior Enning smiled with pride and declared, "The human race has gained yet another divine-level powerhouse, and all thanks to Lin." A yellow beam was crossing through the whole palace as the old man realized that god-level fluctuations were happening all over. The director of the Genesis Academy was on the verge of becoming a god-tier powerhouse. He was floating in the sky while the other two people looked at him, realizing that he was about to become a deity, and they couldn't believe he had gotten so far ahead of them. Hearing that, old Enning wanted the directors to thank him, because if it weren't for him snagging the beast god's lead bone from divine General Lin, they would never have gained the ability to ascend to god-tier powerhouse level so swiftly. Upon hearing this, the director turned towards the old man, telling him that he owed a big thanks to the great divine General Lin this time. But this annoyed the old man because he wanted the thanks to be his, not Lin's. Finally, all of them realized that the human race had finally gained another god-level powerhouse. This was an amazing thing. As the scene shifted, we saw that both Lin and Enning Yi got out of the portal, which was radiating with a purple aura. When Lin opened the system panel, he found out that he was in first place with a record time of 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 38 seconds. Second place belonged to Creation Academy and Genesis Academy, with times of 6 hours, 29 minutes, and 6 hours, 52 minutes, respectively. But Lin couldn't believe he had strolled around for 3 whole hours in such a weak dungeon. Enning Yi was shocked, wondering if it wasn't good enough for Lin that they were twice as fast as the other teams, which should be more than enough to satisfy everyone. But Lin started going back inside, telling the lady that they were going to grind through the dungeon again, and this time he would speedrun it in one go. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon hall, everyone was excited, because the divine General Lin was going to speedrun the dungeon and break records multiple times. They couldn't believe that Lin was breaking records while also carrying beautiful ladies through dungeons and dating them. According to them, this was just the beginning, and the results that followed would be even more astounding. Every time the beast god revealed its true form, it was hunted by the 3 major academies, but this time, the audience was finally witnessing those people's disappointed faces. One of the students commented that the expression would be something new to witness, and it was bound to be a masterpiece. The divine General Lin's achievements were nothing short of legendary, and the other academies were surely being driven into despair. As the scene shifted back into the dungeon, Lin was grabbing the lady at her curvy parts and telling her to hold on, because this time they were heading straight to the 4th platform without wasting much time. The lady blushed and smiled, wondering what would happen to the bosses on the previous platforms. Lin explained that she should leave it to him and not worry, as he had many skeletons who would handle those low-level bosses, and everything would be completely fine. As the scene shifted, we returned to the 4th platform once again, where the beast god Phantom finally appeared. It was a level 52 world-class boss, and the Phantom was running around causing havoc. But Lin told the creature that he didn't have time to mess around, and since he needed to speed through the dungeon, he would take care of it without much effort. Finally, the fight between the beast god and Lin began once again. Meanwhile, the Creation Academy team was going through the dungeon for the first time. Cheng Yang felt that at last, they could take on the true form of the beast god. We come to know that the person was none other than Captain Singh, who thought they had hardly made any mistakes on the first 3 platforms, and it seemed to him that the new record was within reach. But then they saw the beast god fighting with another creature. The captain wondered what was going on, and then saw that the beast god wasn't actually there. Instead, Lin was just fighting its phantom. So he began to wonder where the real one actually was. At first, he thought the other 2 academies had gotten ahead of them, but that wasn't possible. They couldn't possibly be faster. Then he decided to forget about it for now and focus on taking down the beast god's phantom, so they could step outside and see what was going on. As the scene shifted, we came to the team from Genesis Academy, and the same thoughts were echoed by the Flame Emperor Academy. They couldn't believe that the beast god phantom had already fallen, and it seemed that somehow they were the ones who had fallen behind. As the scene shifts, we see that both Lin and Enning Yi came out of the portal once again while hugging each other. Lin told the lady that this time, the speed should be just right. She felt like she had just taken a roller coaster ride and cleared a dungeon in one go, wondering how it happened so fast. Hearing that, Lin just smiled and told her they should go inside as soon as possible so they could level up the confidence they had already gained after defeating the dungeon multiple times. So they finally went in and teleported to the dungeon once again, while the entire audience watched and wondered if they had seen it correctly. They quickly realized that the record Lin had already set was not enough. Now it was going to get even more competitive. They couldn't wait to see the expressions on the teams from the 3 major colleges when they witnessed the new record. As the scene shifts to 3 hours later, we see that one of the teams from the 3 major academies exited the dungeon. Feng immediately told his teammates to check the leaderboard without wasting any more time. But as he turned around, the captains from the other 2 academies also came out. They started hurling insults at each other. accusing the others of showing their true colors and slaying the real beast god first. But when one of the members looked at the leaderboard, he was shocked. The dungeon had been completed in just 9 minutes and 43 seconds. He saw the name of Divine General Lin at the top of the leaderboard and realized that Lin was not a force to be taken lightly. The result left him in utter despair, as there was nothing they could do about it. Meanwhile, the captain thought it was impossible. No one could achieve such a score. There was no way Lin, even as a divine general, should have been able to do it. He assumed Lin must have used some kind of cheating trick to claim victory. But the man beside him told the captain they should just head back, because the results were only going to get tighter from here, and it would be nothing short of spectacular. The captain couldn't understand why Han was being so supportive of Divine General Lin, wondering if the boy really was that impressive. Han replied that he viewed Divine General Lin like a star shining far above them in the sky. Hearing that, the captain ordered everyone to just head back and wait for the results. Just then, Lin and Enning Yi came out of the dungeon portal, and the captain realized this was his chance. He immediately shouted at Lin Moyu, asking if he was the youngest divine general. One of his subordinates realized that Feng was up to no good and might get himself killed, so he tried to stop him, but Feng refused to listen. Another man watching them concluded that Feng was just an idiot and that the real show was about to begin. Lin wondered who the person was and why he was shouting at him. Feng introduced himself, saying he was from the Creation Academy. He directly asked Lin how he had managed to clear the dungeon in that time, accusing him of cheating because it couldn't possibly be real. The lady beside Lin grew angry, wondering if the captain was out of his mind. Even if he were sane, there was no way they should share their strategies with a stranger. But the captain rudely told the woman to shut up, saying she wasn't part of the conversation. Hearing that, Lin was not pleased at all. His eyes began to glow with a necromantic blue hue, and he told the captain that he had no obligation to answer him. He warned the captain to watch his tone and not to speak to his girlfriend like that. The leader couldn't believe that Lin was dismissing him. He told the boy that he was a genius from the Creation Academy and that, sooner or later, he would rise to become a divine general. He thought Lin wasn't answering his question because he had used some underhanded tactics and was just a fake divine general. Hearing that was truly shocking for Enning, although she didn't say anything. But Lin was now getting annoyed. He told the leader that he was busy with work until he became a god or divine general or whatever. So the man should talk to him later and, for now, step aside and not block his dungeon run, because it was important. But the leader wasn't ready to move. He was so dense that he insisted he only wanted to ask a few questions, and once Lin answered, he would naturally step aside. He was outright insulting Lin now, claiming his chance at becoming a legendary general was just a stroke of luck and nothing more. Enning couldn't stay quiet anymore. She spoke up in defense of her boyfriend, telling the leader that the place they were standing in was the dungeon hall, a place for learning, not for barging in, hurling baseless accusations and insulting others. But the boy was so foolish that he ignored Enning's warning and immediately resorted to violence, screaming at Lin to answer his question. But Lin was in no mood for talking. He immediately activated one of his skills and red aura began to surround his hands. He was sure the captain was asking for death, otherwise he wouldn't be acting so stubborn. As soon as the skill hit the leader, he was cursed with the curse of slowness, and multiple monsters emerged from the ground. They resembled undead from the realm of decay. The monsters attacked without warning, biting into the brat's neck. They surrounded him and gnawed all over his body, subjecting him to intense pain and agony. But after a moment, the entire scene shifted. Nothing had actually happened. Lin asked the fallen captain if that was all the courage he had. The brat realized in horror that it had all been an illusion. Everything he felt was terrifyingly real, but still completely fake. He couldn't understand how something like that was even possible. Then one of the brat's friends stepped in to rescue him, telling him to just go home and not challenge a divine general whose power he didn't even understand. The scene shifted back to the main dungeon hall. A crowd had gathered in a circle around Lin and the others, everyone shocked by what had just occurred. To the onlookers, it looked like the guy had simply been spooked and collapsed to the ground. Still, No one could comprehend how Lin had so quickly flipped the entire scenario to his advantage without even lifting a finger. But Lin didn't care in the slightest. He walked up to his girlfriend and told her to forget about the brat and continue grinding and leveling up. Enning was pleased with Lin's reaction. He hadn't let the insults go unchallenged. Happy with his attitude, the two headed off into the dungeon once more. The scene shifts again, this time to the director's office a few hours later. The brat had gone to the director, asking how Lin could possibly have finished the dungeon so quickly. He accused Lin of using some kind of shady tactic that he wasn't revealing. But the director was far from amused. In fact, he was angry with the brat, at least Lin had brains unlike him. He told the brat that Lin was indeed a divine general, and his status was on par with divine-level powerhouses. Lin was so revered that he was practically seen as a deity. This wasn't some casual feat. The number of dragons and demon clan professionals Lin had slain far surpassed anything the brat could imagine, even in his wildest dreams. Even the director had to respectfully refer to Lin as Divine General Lin. There was absolutely no reason anyone like the brat should dare gossip behind his back, let alone block his dungeon path. The brat finally realized he wasn't special at all. Even the director was referring to Lin with the title of Divine General. He should have known his place. Now the director was truly irritated with his student. He told him to shut up and listen carefully. The entire process of Lin's dungeon run had been witnessed by the three deans, who observed everything firsthand. They confirmed that Lin not only speedrun the entire dungeon, but also wiped out every single monster in the instance, and even killed the original beast god. But the real question was, how much time did he take? The director revealed that Lin had slain the original form of the beast god with a single instant kill move, taking no more than 10 seconds. And if Lin really had used the kind of despicable tactics the brat was suggesting, then the deans would have certainly noticed. Now the boy finally realized he had been completely exposed, his jealousy laid bare for everyone to see. He had been nothing more than a fool, daring to stand face to face with Divine General Lin and hurl insults, demanding answers as if he were his equal. The director, wiping sweat from his forehead, told the boy that although he was also a genius from the Creation Academy, the gap between him and Lin was simply too vast. Yet despite this, the brat had allowed arrogance to cloud his judgment, thinking himself above everyone, even daring to insult Lin. And now he was facing the consequences. The director sternly warned him not to pull any more stunts like this again. If he could behave, then the matter would end here and now. Instead, the brat should prepare himself and head to the Eternal Trials arena for training. But the boy was far from pleased with this decision. He nervously mentioned that the ancestral grounds of the Creation Academy would be opening soon, and if he missed that opportunity, it would be a huge loss. However, the director didn't even turn to face him. He simply said the ancestral grounds would open again in the future, and that his decision was final. The boy needed more discipline and had to let go of the arrogance he had displayed in front of a divine general. Left with no choice, the brat quietly agreed, and the scene shifted. More than 10 days had passed. Lin and Enning were still in the dungeons, battling monsters relentlessly and leveling up non-stop. Lin was smiling as he brought down another creature, and it was revealed that he had now reached level 45. Enning, too, proudly declared that after 10 days of grinding, she had finally hit level 44. She was now a level 44 shadow assassin. Suddenly, Lin's smartwatch began to ring. He answered the call and saw that it was none other than the White Divine, summoning him to their usual meeting place. Lin immediately agreed. As the scene changed, both Lin and Enning teleported to the familiar tea house and found the dean of the Genesis Academy already seated between two elders, White Divine himself and Enning's grandfather. Lin noticed that the dean radiated a divine aura, and without hesitation, he bowed respectfully, congratulating the man on achieving God-tier status. The dean merely smiled and said it was all thanks to Lin and the beast god's leg bones, without which he wouldn't have advanced so quickly. White Divine smiled at his disciple and explained that the reason for summoning him was of great importance. The ancestral grounds of the Genesis Academy were soon to open, and as a member of the Academy, Lin had been selected to participate. The dean had already made the decision to send him in so he could further hone his abilities. He began to share some guidance. The ancestral land was a dangerous place, filled with powerful and aggressive beings roaming freely. Lin would have to be careful and strategic in his approach. Near the heart of the ancestral island, there were fruit-bearing trees, and consuming those fruits would bring great benefits. Once Lin ate the fruit, he would enter the second phase, a state of enlightenment. What he grasped during this phase would vary from person to person. If Lin succeeded in that phase, he would then move into the third phase, though little information existed about it. Based on past accounts, it seemed to be closely linked to whatever insight a person had gained in the second phase. Legends spoke of a fourth phase beyond that, but those who managed to reach it often had no recollection of entering it. Their memories of the ancestral land would become vague, and its specific details would remain a mystery. During this fifth era of the Genesis ancestral era, a grand event would unfold. This time, a total of 30 individuals would accompany Lin on this remarkable journey. However, how many opportunities Lin could seize would depend entirely on him. Lin immediately bowed and thanked the dean for such a generous opportunity. Enning stood quietly behind him, smiling with pride and happiness, grateful that she could continue being with Lin even longer. 2 days later, the scene shifted to the Genesis Academy. Divine light swept through the entire campus as birds flew across the sky. Representatives from the 3 great academies had gathered, and the ancestral land had finally awakened. The chosen candidates from each institution had arrived. Among the crowd were familiar faces. Lin's own sister, as well as Lady Moyun, had also made their appearance, standing alongside the other powerful individuals who would embark on this extraordinary journey.